mean, Ashwin, if it looks like the time is getting. Do you have this more to do all of?
No.
You have a cut. You have the cut. Okay, good. You do the cut. Good.
started Yentif. If I can ask the ushers to hold everybody in the back, and I'll ask our congregation to please rise. We begin on page 14. Yom Kippur, the Jewish people's festival of the soul, and Kol Nidre, its sacred portal, a night of deep emotions, a night, as the psalmist wrote, to rejoice with trembling.
We rejoice at the sound of Kol Nidre, rhythmic words of release from vows, oaths, and promises to God we fail to keep.
We tremble at the melody, music of spiritual amazement. It fills us with awe as we stand before God and Torah.
We rejoice that we stand together, strengthened by community in this hour of shared weakness and humility.
We tremble, for tonight we confess our flaws, admit our imperfection, and acknowledge a power far beyond our understanding.
We rejoice that we commit ourselves to great endeavors because we feel so deeply and think so nobly.
We tremble, for we find that our ideals are far greater than our ability. Our promises surpass our might.
We rejoice in the freedom that is Kol Nidre's true gift, the freedom to begin a new year without fear of failure, to aspire to be God's image in the world.
We tremble because we are mortal. We rejoice in our gratitude for life.
We rejoice with trembling and enter Kol Nidre to face our humanity.
You may be seated. On Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, the focus is on Kedusha, holiness. In temple times, this was the one and only day of the year when the high priest entered the Holy of Holies. Now that the temple is destroyed, we endeavor to enter instead into our personal Holy of Holies, and by coming in touch with the most intimate part of our divine soul, to connect with God. Thus, Yom Kippur is the day of the soul, when the soul is closest to God. On Yom Kippur, more than any other day, we have the ability to look at everything with eyes of our soul and not with the eyes of our body. Today is a fast day. We want to remind people that fasting is a goal, not a marathon. The function of fasting on Yom Kippur is to stretch ourselves, to help purify our spirits, to go beyond what we typically do, and also to sort of separate this day from the rest of the days. It's really meant to elevate our spirit. Those of you who fast might know that feeling towards the end of the day tomorrow when you're just sort of floating, not necessarily because you haven't eaten or drinking, but because you've sat here all day with us, immersed in the words of our prayer book, of our machzor, and also because you haven't eaten or drinking anything. We want to remind people also that as you go through the fasting, if you need to sit when we say please rise, that's okay. And we do ask that there is no water or food in the sanctuary, but if you are not fasting and you need to have a sip of something, we ask you to do it outside. Throughout our services over the next 24, 25 hours, we will have an opportunity to verbally say I'm sorry, communally as well as individually. The goal really is to help redirect our hearts and aim for a better direction in this coming year. There are times throughout the entire year that we really do our best, and then there are times that we do a little bit less than our best. And this is the time to reflect on those moments, to offer apologies between the people that you need to do that with. And I do believe if those people aren't with you and you want to write that down, we have cards that say I'm sorry on them. You can get those in the back, and you can write down what you need to write down for the people in your life. And Kol Nidre itself, this evening's motif, this evening's hallmark musical piece and liturgy, teaches us that it does not release us from vows that we have made to one another, but only the vows that we made to God. So it is our work to release ourselves from the promises we made to ourselves and didn't fulfill, and to say that's okay, we'll try again, as well as to the promises we made to one another and didn't fulfill, and to say that's okay, we will try again. Shana Tova, Gamar Hatima Tova, may you all be sealed in the book of life, and may you have a very meaningful Yom Kippur. So I want to invite everybody to turn back to page 9. And I want to invite up our candle lighters, Jennifer and John Richardson, and if Cooper and Ella and Sam are here, for them to come on up as well. Do we see the Richardsons? Ah. Hi, friends.
The human spirit is a lamp of God, searching out what lies within us, guided by the flame of conscience on this sacred night. We search for truth. Shine your light upon us as we strive to serve you. May we find safety in your faithful love. We light the flame of healing and forgiveness. On this atonement night, we give thanks for love.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Yom Kippurim.
Amen.
Source of blessing, eternal our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, teaching us holiness through sacred obligations, giving us the mitzvah of bringing light on Yom Kippur.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen.
Source of blessing, our eternal God, you fill the universe with majestic light, giving us, upholding the life within us, and bringing us to this time.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom
I want to invite up all of our past presidents of the Brooklyn Heights Synagogue to come on up to the bima, and we are going to turn to page 16, and I want to ask everybody to please rise.
For those who have gathered with us over the years, you'll note that the smallest Torah is now adorned with new silver pomegranates and a shield dedicated in memory of our beloved Jean. It was presented by Fran. I want to read the inscription on the shield for this first occasion. In celebration of Jean Gottfried's 100 years, March 15th, 1915 through April 2nd, 2015, Francis Gottfried and Caroline Gottfried Kahn of blessed memory. Together, with one voice, assembled sages past and present declare, all may pray as one on this night of repentance. Let none be excluded from our community of prayer. With one voice, God and congregation proclaim, all may pray as one on this day of return. Let all find a place in this sacred assembly. You'll find the text of Kol Nidre on the next page, on page 18, and I encourage you to consider the meditations on pages 17 and 19 as well.
Vacharame vekoname מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו לטובה כולהון יהון שרן שביכין שביתין בתלין ובוטלין לשרירין ולקיימין נדרנה לנדרה ואסרנה לאסר ושבועתנה לשבועות Kol Nidre ve'esare v'acharame ve'kaname וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות
Together on the bottom of 18. All vows, resolves, and commitments, vows of abstinence and terms of obligation, sworn promises and oaths of dedication that we promise and swear to God and take upon ourselves from this day of atonement until next day of atonement, may it find us well. We regret them, and for all of them we repent. Let all of them be discarded and forgiven, abolished and undone. They are not valid, and they are not binding. Our vows shall not be vows, and our oaths shall not be oaths. All shall be forgiven, the entire community of Israel and the stranger who lives in their midst, for all have gone astray in error. Moses prayed to God, as you have been faithful to this people ever since Egypt, please forgive their failings now in keeping with your boundless love. And God responded, I forgive as you have asked. Thank you. Good Yontif. Thank you very much. Good Yontif. Easy fast. Easy fast. We remain standing as we prepare to move into our evening service, Ma'ariv. We turn to page 22.
Please be seated, everyone. We are on page 24. We join together. Blessed are you, Adonai. Your great name fills the universe with majestic might. Your word creates twilight and dusk as your wisdom opens the gates of night. Your discernment separates the changing seasons and causes the passage of time. The stars raised across the sky reveal your design. You roll out the cycle of darkness and light, shape out of all we can perceive and all that is beyond our perception. Living, eternal God, be our sovereign to the end of time. Blessed are you, Adonai, creator of twilight and dusk.
Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Arabim.
Together on page 26, love beyond all space and time. Your love enfolds your people, Yisrael. We receive it in your teaching, sacred obligations, discipline, and law. Let us speak these things when we lie down and when we rise up, and find joy forever in your Torah and mitzvot. They are the very essence of our life, ours to ponder and study all our days. May we never lose or be unworthy of your love, for you are blessed, the one who loves your people, Yisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema
join with the cantor in the chanting of Ve'ahavta on the next page, page 30.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך היו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לתוכם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אלוהיכם emet. Page 41. For every exile who walked out of Egypt between walls of water, for everyone who remembered the feel of sea bottom underfoot, the sibilant roar of water rearing on the right, on the left, someone forgot, someone scanning.
The dry horizon for a well, or already mourning the musky smell of autumn in her father's fig trees, forgot the hosannas, and, by the bitter waves of Mara, forgot the flash of dancing feet, the shimmer of timbrels.
For every proselyte at Sinai, someone never heard of horns at all. Someone turned back from the mountain to bank the fire, feed the baby, steal a secret moment with another.
Revelation begins in attention, while the elders trembled before the word of Sinai, rising from a long last embrace, gazed into the rapt face of the beloved and saw that it was good.
Page 40.
חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני. גל ישראל.
We continue with Hashkivenu on page 42. Together. Bless our sleep with peace, Adonai, and awaken us to life when we rise. With power sublime, spread over us your shelter of shalom, and through your wisdom for us, make us whole. Let him proclaim your presence in our lives. Be our shield, make us stronger than the enemies we face, illness and war, famine and sorrow, and stronger than the enemies in our hearts, wickedness and sin. Carry us to safety as on wings, for you are the monarch of grace, the sovereign of compassion. You are the one who cares for us and sets us free. Watch over us, we who go forth to life. Watch over us that we may come home in peace, now until the end of time. Blessed One, you spread over us a canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael. Page 45, we join together in the English at the top. For on this day atonement shall be made for you to purify you from all your wrongs, and pure shall you be in the presence of Adonai.
יתגדל ויתגדל שמי רבו ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב וימרו
Amen.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה לעילה ולעילה מן כל ברכתה
We rise for tefillah, the standing prayers, page 46.
Shemona
Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Kol atarav lehoshia, morid hatal. החיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה.
And so, turn our ear to heavens, let us be witnesses of wonder, perceiving all nature as a prayer come alive. We bow to the sovereignty of your strength, the primacy of your power. We yearn for connection with all that lives, doing your will with wholeness of heart. Awe-inspiring is your creation, all-encompassing your transcendent name.
And so in your holiness, give your people the gift of honor. Bless with praise those who praise you. Bless with hope those who seek you. Give your believers a basis for faith, true happiness for the land of Israel, true joy in Jerusalem. May the sparks of David, your servant, soon grow bright enough for us to see a beam of light in the darkness, a promise of perfection.
And so, in your holiness, give the righteous the gift of a vision bright with joy, a world where evil has no voice and the rule of violence fades like wisps of smoke. Good people everywhere will celebrate the stunning sight of arrogance gone from the earth.
You and you alone, Adonai, will reign over creation, upon Mount Zion, home of your presence, and in Jerusalem, a city set apart by you. As the psalmist believed, Adonai will reign eternally, your God, O Zion, for all generations. Hallelujah.
You are holy, your name is awesome, there is nothing divine beyond you, as the prophet Isaiah taught. The source of all might is exalted through justice, the God of holiness made holy through righteousness.
Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy sovereign.
Baruch atah Adonai, HaMelech HaKadosh.
We continue continue now with the remaining prayers of tefillah individually and at our own pace and in our own style through page 78 when we invite you to take a seat.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon l'chol ha'shalom. V'tov b'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol leituvcha sha'a b'shlomecha. B'sefer chayim b'racha b'racha v'shalom nizacher v'nitkatev lefanecha אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
Speaking of shalom, please note, in the case of the need to depart the sanctuary, I've been asked to share these words of direction with you. In addition to the doors through which you arrived today, there are exit doors in the following areas: the rear of Hillis Hall, directly behind me, just beyond the back staircase to your left, my right, between the sanctuary and Hillis Hall. Further over in the arcade, which is the connecting walkway between this building and the one immediately west of us, where the religious school programming takes place. Please follow all instructions provided by our ushers or greeters in the event that we should have to depart unexpectedly. Good Yontif. Som Kal, an easy and a meaningful fast. This evening I come to offer confession, not a surprise, and al chet for the sins of my youth, sins of omission and wishful thinking, sins of disregard and dismissal, sins of naivete. In the 70s, who was just learning all the various acronyms of organized Jewish life, I was more than moderately dismissive of what I perceived to be our people's obsession with every minor act of synagogue vandalism and swastika scrolling, while I myself experienced the occasional anti-Semitic taunt of kike or Christ killer. I was secure enough in my Jewish identity and commitments and my sense of full-fledged American birthright that such incidents were easy for me to dismiss. And in that dismissive adolescent attitude, I remember being both bothered and bemused, wondering at what sort of backward thinking it took for an organization like the BBADL, B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation League, now just the ADL, to have offices in almost every American city, which were in large part tasked with keeping monthly track of local and regional anti-Semitic incidents, from the smallest to the greatest. Many of those incidents, by the way, were often committed by others in my larger teenage cohort. All of this was quite ephemeral. By the 1970s, anti-Semitic violence appeared to have been mostly driven out of the daylight. The anti-Semitism that was part of my teenage concern was the persecution of Soviet Jewry, for which we marched and rallied to obtain their release to Israel or America. I can still recall youth group and summer camp programs devoted to reenacting and role-playing the perilous and impossible choices faced by Soviet Jewish refuseniks like Natan Sharansky. And yet, as a young Jew of my family, my synagogue religious education, with its constant drumbeat of anti-Semitism, Holocaust remembrance, and historic Jewish suffering. That was the trifecta: anti-Semitism, Holocaust remembrance, and historic Jewish suffering, made me yearn to be something other than an unchoosing Jewish victim in a long chain of unchoosing Jewish victims. Like many, I thought that after the Holocaust, there was no longer enough air for any form of anti-Semitism that might endanger my life or my family's. Yes, there were, as we put it, nut jobs, kooks, and crazies, marginalized individuals who craved this perhaps even more than they hated us. But it seemed to me, in that adolescent naivete, that America had far more problematic issues to deal with than the minor, stubborn, remnant adherents of Jew hatred. By counting and reviewing these incidents, weren't we working against our own well-being, giving light and air and expansion to something that should and would continue to wither and suffocate if we just ignored it? Chatati, I was wrong. I was mistaken. I was naive. Anti-Semitism is a viral infection in the body of humanity. In places where there are and have been no Jews, are no and have been no Jews, it is as virulent as in geographies that are long associated with our people. It is not even a single idea, a singular theory. It is instead a shape-shifting world virus, an ever more conspiracy theory in which we Jews play the starring role in spreading evil throughout the world. The anti-Semite believes that the Jews are a nefarious force that secretly exerts control over our government, that Jewish bankers manipulate the global economy, that Jews secretly and not so secretly pull the levers of power. Anti-Semitism is a conspiracy theory without any grounding in reality. It is, though, a grand unified theory of everything. As the father of modern French anti-Semitism, the British historian Paul Johnson describes anti-Semitism as a deeply rooted and highly infectious thought virus carried in the DNA of Western culture. It is only when you are under severe stress that your immune system falters and you start to get sick. And then the virus, which has been dormant, will begin to reveal itself. Likewise, in our culture, when a society's immune system is healthy and functioning normally, the virus is kept in check. Our social immune system is weakened, as it is right now, and dramatically so, the virus will out, as it has so many times before, in some of the most seemingly civilized cultures on the planet. In my 20s and 30s, I quickly and repeatedly came to see that anti-Semitism was still ever present if mostly quiescent. It lurked, barely concealed in shadowy corners, years in Chicago, New York, and Arizona, student pulpits in Ohio, Queens, and Brooklyn, my annual trips back and forth to Israel. There it was, always lurking. By the time I was ordained by Hebrew Union College in New York in May of 1991, I understood, as I believe many of my classmates did, that an undiscussed condition of employment as a congregational rabbi was, however unlikely, that each and every synagogue was a potential target of this most ancient irrational hatred, and we rabbis were wearing the target. For most of my career, I lived with a hope that this fear would remain only that. I realized night terror. For in America, we Jews seemed, if not immune to this irrational Jew hatred, then at least shielded from the worst that our people had experienced in Europe and the Middle East. I was foolish enough to hope that this shielding would last forever, or at least beyond my own lifetime. And there was reason for that hope. Our experience as Jews in America had been different, not entirely, but different enough to be hopeful. Hadn't the founding president of the United States, George Washington, written to citizens of Newport, Rhode Island, quote, "It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. The stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." The events of World War II and the first-hand exposure of Americans to the atrocities of the Nazi Holocaust revealed the depth of madness and depravity to which anti-Semitism could sink. Post-war America became a safer, fairer, and more opportune place for Jews because of the lessons learned from the horrendous facts and truths revealed at the American trials of Nazi radical inoculation that brought about decades of anti-Semitic quietude and dormancy. Jews prospered and integrated into America as never before. Though we are less than 2% of the population of the United States, today Americans feel warmer about Jews than any other religious group. We're just ahead of Catholics, according to the 2017 Pew Research poll. And we are so well loved that around 70% of non-Orthodox Jews now marry outside the tribe. As opinion writer Barry Weiss observes about her own Jewish familial experience and history, the consummate outsiders had, in mere decades, become the insiders, capable of advocating not just for themselves, but also for those still facing systemic discrimination, and all without having to give up smoked fish or Yom Kippur, end quote. And yet, like many comfortable, affluent Jews, her life took a sudden and unexpected detour last October. "I had spent much of my life on a holiday from history," she writes, "and history, in a hail of bullets, made its unequivocal return to her hometown. On Saturday morning, October 27, 2018, Parshat Vayera, 46-year-old Robert Gregory Bowers, a white ethno-nationalist, already infuriated that HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, was helping Central American migrants and refugees enter and settle in the U.S., walked into the Tree of Life congregation in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh as Shabbat morning services were underway. He murdered 11 people and injured 6 others: Joyce Feinberg, Richard Gottfried, Rose Mallinger, Jerry Rabinowitz, brothers Cecil and David Rosenthal, husband and wife Sylvan and Bernice Simon, Daniel Stein, Melvin Wax, and Irving Younger. Aleichem Hashalom. It remains the deadliest attack on the Jewish community in the United States. But 6 months to the day, on Saturday morning, April 27, 2019, the 8th day of Passover by traditional diaspora custom, 19-year-old John Timothy Ernest walked into Chabad of Poway and murdered Lori Gilbert Kay and wounded Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, and then turned into a side room that included a number of children and fired into that room, wounding Almog Peretz and his niece, 8-year-old Noya Dahan. You know, in 2014, Noya's family had relocated from Sderot in Israel to Mira Mesa, California, in order to escape the regular barrage of rockets launched by Hamas from the nearby Gaza Strip. During their first Passover in America, swastikas were painted on their garage. For a time, the family of 5 all slept in a single locked room with knives and baseball bats. Who would have imagined that 8-year-old Noya, accompanying her visiting Israeli uncle Almog, would return from Passover services at Chabad with shrapnel in her leg and her cheek? "We came from fire to fire," said Noya's father, Israel Dahan. As Barry Weiss observed, in one instance, the terrorist was a white supremacist. In another, the terrorists were Islamists. Both wanted to do the same thing to the Dahan family. In her brief new book, How to Fight Anti-Semitism, Barry Weiss offers us a brief, non-technical, highly readable synopsis of the history and forms of anti-Semitism, and I'm not getting any kickbacks if you go and buy it. Her identifications in the book matter because anti-Semitism does come in a variety of viral and viral forms, some overlapping and others appearing mutually exclusive. Weiss uses the metaphor of a 3-headed dragon to describe the current versions of anti-Semitism. On the far right, the hardcore anti-Semitism of neo-Nazis, white supremacists, Christian ethno-nationalists, and their ilk. Jews are condemned by them as internationalists, disparaged for being insufficiently white, and for refusing to renounce universalist values. This anti-Semitism is an anti-globalism that regurgitates many of the oldest anti-Semitic tropes, even as it pretends to be fervently pro-Israel. It is, as the writer Dara Horn labels it, a kind of Purim anti-Semitism, exemplified by the Persian genocidal decrees in the biblical Book of Esther, as well as by more recent ideologies like Nazism. The regime's goal is always unambiguous: kill all the Jews. It seeks Judenrein, a land free of Jews altogether. This is the anti-Semitism of the far right head. On the far left, Weiss identifies a softer but equally dangerous anti-Semitism, which she identifies with the Olympics of victimization, telling us Jews that we have no claim to being oppressed, that we are too white, too privileged. It is an anti-Semitism which denies our Jewish peoplehood and our right to self-determination, and treats Israel as a uniquely diabolical state. Anti-Zionist anti-Semitism cloaks itself in the language of progressive values, standing up for the downtrodden, protecting the underdog, even as anti-Zionists make common cause with some of the most regressive ideologies and regimes on earth. Dara Horn labels this anti-Semitism Hanukkah anti-Semitism. Don't worry, just Purim and Hanukkah. The goal of Hanukkah anti-Semitism is to eliminate Jewish civilization. It asks Jews to commit cultural genocide, to abandon their identity and their traditions, and to worship false idols to survive. And the third head of the dragon is a rabid anti-Semitism of radical Islam, which combines elements of the previous two and which sees every Jew as an enemy and a legitimate target. Moshe Kantor, who's president of the European Jewish Congress, goes further. He says there is increasingly a sense of emergency among Jews in many countries around the world, and it is now clear that anti-Semitism is no longer limited to the far left, far right, and radical Islamist triangle, as he puts it. It has become mainstream and often accepted in civil society. Western Europe has seen a 70% increase in violent anti-Semitic attacks. In addition to the shootings, the assaults, the vandalism, Kantor also notes the increased anti-Semitic vitriol online and in newspapers. We see it everywhere. The ascendancy of British Labour Party's leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has coincided with increasing physical assaults on British Jews. In France, Jews are squeezed between anti-Semitic violence of the Banyuls and the anti-Semitic activists amongst the yellow vests. In Germany, especially Berlin, identifiable Jews are so subject to ongoing physical assaults from every head of the dragon that this past May, Germany's anti-Semitism commissioner, Felix Klein, declared that he could no longer recommend that Jews wear a kippah everywhere and any time in Germany. It just isn't safe. Likewise, in Australia, Jews are pressed in a similar vice between neo-Nazi extremists and radical Islamists. In Moscow, on the eve of Passover this year, a fire was set to the largest yeshiva in Moscow, Yeshiva Torat Chaim. In Poland, do I have to tell you, describing Polish complicity in the Holocaust is now a crime. And in Pruchnik, Poland, I don't know if you saw this, residents constructed an effigy that looked like a stereotypical Jew, which was then beaten by children and adults alike, hung and burned as part of an Easter ritual. In Amsterdam, a Jewish man was assaulted on the Netherlands' national holiday of liberation from the Nazis. All the while, a crowd of 50 revelers sang about gassing Jews while pushing, kicking, and verbally assaulting the same man. In Argentina, 3 men harassed and beat Rabbi Shlomo Tawil, a Chabad shaliach, while shouting anti-Semitic epithets and trampling his hat. And in Peru, the governor of the Junin region used anti-Semitic statements alleging, what else? Jewish control of politics, the economy, and finances in his country. There are many more incidents all over the world. Meanwhile, here in the USA, we continue to see incidents of anti-Semitic threats and violence. Just recently, in August, a man fired shots from a BB gun at Valley Village Community Kollel, a yeshiva for married men in LA. Here in Brooklyn, 64-year-old Rabbi Avraham Gopin was assaulted by a 26-year-old using a massive cobblestone to bludgeon Gopin while the rabbi was jogging in Lincoln Terrace Park. In upstate New York, a political video entitled "A Storm is Coming," boy, that has resonance, warned of a Hasidic takeover of Rockland County. And in September, Columbia University gave Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad a soapbox at the university. This for a man who describes himself as, quote, proud to be labeled anti-Semitic, unquote. And a neighboring Williamsburg synagogue was attacked during Rosh Hashanah services 10 days ago as a milk crate and later a medical object were thrown through the window during worship. So the question is no longer, will another incident take place? Rather, when and where and how many? This is a state of affairs that I had desperately and perhaps vainly hoped would not be bequeathed to my children. A world in which publicly expressing their Jewish identity, pride, and commitments might come at risk to their safety or perhaps even their very lives. And yet, I remain convinced that America is still different. How different remains an open and as yet unanswered question, but different. Rabbi Danny Schiff, a scholar at the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, comments that at first glance, the massacre of Jews at synagogue worship in Squirrel Hill may look like another pogrom in the endless stream of pogroms that stretch back over 2 millennia. And yet, he says, it is also different, profoundly different. Why? Because of the neighbors, he writes. Since the Pittsburgh attack, loving individuals of every background have embraced Jews tightly in multiple overwhelming ways. Government leaders, prominent religious figures, corporations, sports teams, and an unprecedented myriad of fellow citizens have declared loudly and emphatically that they will stand by Jews. This is breathtaking and profoundly moving, a reality that is virtually unparalleled in Jewish experience. I want to repeat this in Rabbi Schiff's words. This breathtaking and profoundly moving reality is virtually unparalleled in the Jewish experience. But this is America. Such an experience demands a reappraisal of the classic anti-Semitism narrative, he writes. Once in the not-so-distant past, Jews faced this evil essentially alone. Now, whatever evil Jews face in the United States is vastly overmatched by a sea of goodness. 2 contradictory trends are at work in this country. Alongside rising levels of anti-Semitism, there exists a dramatic burgeoning of caring for us Jews. The pivotal question in the long run is, which trend will prevail? He writes, the United States could turn in the direction of Europe, where many Jews feel fearful and threatened. Or the United States could aspire to become a nation where anti-Semitism, whether in speech or deed, is universally despised, building upon post-attack Pittsburgh as its model. Taking this latter path, writes Rabbi Schiff, would seem essential for the success of the American experiment. And that is because in America, most citizens view us Jews, first and foremost, as fellow American citizens. Citizens entitled to the same security and same protections that they expect for themselves and for their friends and for their neighbors. In fact, frequently we are their family, their friends, and their neighbors. And this is why I believe America is still different. So what shall we do? How shall we act? On one level, the answer is that we need do nothing. As Barry Weiss so sagely observes, anti-Semitism is not a test of us Jews, it is a test of our surrounding societies. On the other hand, we are not so foolish. We will not stick our head in the sand and pretend that this will just go away. Now, as you already know, our synagogue has increased our security personnel. hired the paid detail police officers who you stood standing outside and at synagogue service and bar and bat mitzvahs. We review and re-review our security plans. We practice active shooter and lockdown drills. We've improved and increased our surveillance technology. We've hardened our physical plant. We've applied for state and federal security grants. We coordinate with our local 84th precinct and the NYPD and the Jewish Community Security Service apparatus. And you can help by reminding our elected and appointed officials that we need them to do more than simply offer the expected words and optics. Despite public promises, security around Jewish institutions in New York City is still too often business as usual. And it scares me to consider what it will take to motivate a real change. Nevertheless, we are doing all we can in-house while striving to keep Brooklyn Heights Synagogue both a warm and inviting community synagogue. It is a tight wire walk, and we are still learning. And it's costly, you know that, and time-consuming. And I honestly want to thank each and every one of you for your patience, your understanding, and your support. This is not an area in which any of us in the lay or professional leadership previously had any deep background. Beyond securing our synagogue, what can we and should we do? In her final chapter of How to Fight Anti-Semitism, Barry Weiss offers something of a laundry list of 30 practical and philosophical approaches. Let me offer somewhat shorter and condensed list. First, we need to shine a spotlight on anti-Semitism wherever we see or hear it. And by we, I don't just mean Jewish organizations and their leaders. I mean we, Jewish individuals, in our day-to-day settings and circumstances, in family conversations, and in business gatherings, and in our communal organizations. Alliances that ask you to disavow or distort a fundamental part of yourself are not okay. For many of us, far-right anti-Semitism is easier to identify and critique than far-left anti-Semitism, which is often caught up with other minority communities that are experiencing their own tribulations. As my colleague Rabbi Angela Warnick-Buchdahl preached last year, we have to be as intolerant of anti-Semitism from our allies as from our foes. As Jews, we must insist that the society we live in takes a constant and public stand against both anti-Semitism and anti-Semites. Second, as Weiss labels it, apply the kippah test. Based on the story of a 14-year-old Mitchell Leshner who decided to wear a kippah, which he normally doesn't, to his middle school graduation following the shooting in Poway. It's about the same time many of us took up wearing kippot full time. It is important to make a statement that we are still here, and no matter what happens, we'll still be here, he said. If you live in a neighborhood or work for an organization where you wouldn't be comfortable wearing a kippah or other readily noticeable external symbol of your Jewishness, then it's time to ask why and to do something about it. Make an effort to improve it or leave it if you cannot. Third, don't let people divide us as Jews, even if they're other Jews. We are entitled to disagree even among ourselves. Avoid litmus tests of who's a good Jew and who's a bad Jew. As Reformed Jews, we are pluralists and we believe in a diversity of practices and points of view. And as Reformed Jews, we affirm Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Lazeh. Every Jew is bound up with every other Jew. Like an extended family, we can and will argue, but it diminishes us to write off entire groups of Jews who we disagree with. make the effort to look for commonalities we share with Jews we disagree with religiously or politically. And specifically regarding Israel, as Weiss advises, supporting Israel does not mean never criticizing it. On the contrary, supporting Israel means demanding that Israel live up to its ideals. Fourth, speak up publicly in praise of those who stand up publicly against anti-Semitism. You know, it's incredibly hard in our society to publicly put yourself out there. Those who do so on our behalf, whether Jew or Gentile, should know that we have noticed and are grateful for them. Fifth, show up and express your opposition to anti-Semitism. This year, the Women's March Leadership Committee replaced Linda Sassor, Tamika Mallory, and Bob Bland with 16 new board members. And when the ADL revealed that one of those new board members, Zara Bilu, had a long history of deeply offensive and anti-Semitic statements, she was voted off by the new board. It works. At the 2019 Washington, D.C. Dyke March, when it was announced that Jewish pride flags would be banned, organizers showed up on a day's notice with a group of other allies to support those queer Jewish women who wanted to march with their flags. Showing up led to success, and the parade marshals ultimately allowed the Jewish women and their flags into the event. Just 2 weeks ago, my Reform rabbinic colleagues and I showed up at a solidarity rally at Lincoln Terrace Park to show our support for Rabbi Gopin and the Hasidic Jewish community's right to live in safety and security. Take the time. Vote with your feet. Sixth, withhold and redirect your volunteer time and your donations away from organizations that condone or ignore anti-Semites and anti-Semitism, and let them know it in writing, what you're doing and why. There are plenty of Jewish organizations that need your support. Seventh and last, seven's a good number, lean in and nurture your Jewish identity and commitments. Again, as Weiss wordsmiths it, practice a Judaism of affirmation, not a Judaism of defensiveness. Judaism has never been and can never be the practice of anti-Semitism. Each of us is a link in the chain, a knot in the tapestry of the Jewish people and its story. Each of our choices matters immeasurably. What we do Jewishly matters. We are obliged to regularly rekindle the flame on the altar of our Jewish souls. Remind yourself at home in a way that you are a Jew, and encourage the world to see you proudly so. Make Shabbat at home. Show up to Chavurah. Learn to read some Hebrew or speak some Yiddish. Decorate your home with Jewish art. Start reading some Jewish books, biographies, histories, fabulous fiction, or graphic novels. For Shabbat Eve every Friday. Put the mezuzahs up on your doorways, inside and out. Subscribe to a Jewish newspaper, magazine, or blog, and make time to actually read or listen. Take a family trip to Israel or to the Jewish sites in the countries of origin that your grandparents or great-grandparents emigrated from. Seriously consider sending your child or grandchild to a URJ Jewish summer camp, where in addition to arts and crafts and athletics and outdoor air, rabbis and cantors and Jewish educators are on faculty, and the Torah is read and consider Jewish day schools like Heschel and Senish and Luria and Schechter for your child's primary school education. Remind your parents and your children and your siblings and your neighbors, but mostly remind yourself every day that there are a multitude of joyful reasons and experiences for being a proud Jew. Don't let your Jewish soul atrophy. In my Bronx Science yearbook, with just the inklings of reality beginning to break through my adolescent naivete, I selected the following quote to identify myself Jewishly among my peers. Rabbi Hillel taught, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, what sort of person am I? And if not now, when?" Tzom Kal and Good Yontif.
We'll take a moment now to prepare our hearts and our souls for Vidui, confession. We begin on page 82 with Vidui Zuta, and then we will move to our longer confession, Vidui Rabba. And to help center our prayers, I offer you these words, which are on the bottom of 86 if you want to follow along. And during confession, some of us will gently strike our hearts with the right hand. The Midrash identifies this not as an act of self-punishment, but as a way of identifying the heart, that is, desire and impulse, as the source of sin, taking personal responsibility and showing remorse. Rabbi Israel Meir Kagan, known as the Chofetz Chaim, taught, "God does not forgive us when we strike our hearts. Rather, we are forgiven. Our heart strikes us. That is, when we feel the pain of conscience for our wrongdoing." Page 82.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, tavo lefanecha tefilatenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, tzadikim anachnu ve'lo chatanu, aval
Together in the English, our God and God of all generations, May our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong. Together in the English on 84, our turning away from your mitzvot and laws of goodness is a hollow pursuit. You are just concerning all that happens in our lives. Your way is the way of truth, while ours leads to error. What can we say to you whose existence is beyond time and space? What words of ours can reach your realm beyond the clouds, beyond heaven itself? Every hidden mystery, every revelation, surely you know them all. You know the secrets of the universe and the secrets of the human heart. You know and understand us, for you examine our inner lives. Nothing is concealed from you, nothing hidden from your sight. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that this be your will. Forgive all our wrongs. Pardon us for every act of injustice. Help us atone for all our moral failures. We turn to the next page for Vidui Rabbah, the long confession. Please rise. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'zadun uvishgaga ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'dibur peh.
The ways we have wronged you deliberately and by mistake, and harm we have caused in your world through the words of our mouths.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטיפשות פה.
The ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts, and harm we have caused in your world through careless speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפלילות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזלזול הורים ומורים.
The ways we have by judging others unfairly, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בווידוי פה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת רעה.
The ways we have wronged you through insincere apologies, and harm we have caused in your world by mistreating a friend or neighbor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחוזק יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאסר ובמתן.
The ways we have wronged you through violence and abuse, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty and business. Judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי ובסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפריקת עול.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, and harm we have caused in your world by losing self-control.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאכל ובמשתה.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנשע ובמרבית.
The ways we have wronged you by giving into our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through greed and exploitation.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנטיית גרון.
The ways we have wronged you through cynicism and scorn, and harm we have caused in your world through arrogant behavior.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטומאת שפתיים.
The ways we have wronged you by hating without cause, and harm we have caused in your world through offensive speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלשון הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין.
The ways we have wronged you with a slanderous tongue, and harm we have caused in your world through a selfish or petty spirit. Judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
You may be seated. We continue on page 96 with the singing of Ya'aleh. gates of mercy thunder on high as darkness falls. And with dawn, let the joy of renewal arrive. The day holds the urgency of our prayers, confessions of the heart, lamentations of the soul till evening comes. May our yearnings rise above the shadows of dusk. May the searching of our souls reach you in the morning. All day our praise is before you. May it be acceptable. May it be received till evening comes. Page 100. Let's read together. Forgiveness, we come before you in need of compassion. At Sinai, you spoke words that guide our lives to this day. But our ancestors lost faith in you, lost hope in their Redeemer. With one voice they had promised, we will do and obey, and yet stiff-necked they broke their word, adoring an idol of gold. How wondrous your compassion in the face of their rebellion, your forgiveness in that moment of human weakness and doubt. We too have broken promises to you. We too worship the works of our hands. We too make of gold a god, and we too forsake your word. At Sinai, you revealed 13 attributes of mercy. These aspects of your nature, your presence, we now recall. Adonai, Adonai, compassionate, gracious, endlessly patient, loving, and true, showing mercy to the 1,000th generation, forgiving evil, defiance, and wrongdoing, granting pardon. Page 104. Our God and God of our fathers, God of our mothers, do not abandon us, leaving us in shame. Do not dissolve the covenant you made with us. Together, rather draw us near to your teaching. Show us your ways and teach us how to live. Let us be open to your love, ready to revere your very being. Cut away the hardness of our hearts so that we may turn to you with all our heart's devotion, truly repentant. For the sake of your great name, pardon our failures, our moral weakness, as in the holy words of your psalmist, I, as befits your name, my sin, no matter how great. We continue with Kianu Amecha on page 106. Page 112. I'm assuming everything's okay, but I can't help but acknowledge that when the police comes and talks to the senior rabbi, that all the eyes go over there. So
We're just catching up.
Avinu Malkeinu, ha'er lanu et derech chayenu. Avinu Malkeinu, illumine for us the path of our life. Together, Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we find the strength to take the road less traveled by? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we come to know the purpose of our existence? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we learn not to live life in vain? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we get out of our indifference? Avinu, how shall we distinguish between truth and falsehood? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we find the answers to our questions? Avinu Malkeinu, how shall we gird ourselves with strength to seek answers? I want to invite up Steve Cohen, Lisa Melmid Cohen, Ethan Cohen, and Maddie. Is Maddie here? Oh. Yes, and Herb. You were over there. The text of Avinu Malkeinu is on page 114. Please rise. Hi, Maddie. Great to see you. You want to pull in where the black is on the screen there? Over there. Yeah. You can assist him. Hi, Steve. How are you? Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu. Page 114. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu V'Al Aleinu V'Tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our enemies.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei Dever V'Cherev V'Ra'av Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale kol tsar umastin mayalenu. Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer chayim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived. Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for our year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chol aleinu, ve'anu aleinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, malei yadenu b'birchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu, harein keren meshikecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, na'al tishivenu rekam milfanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing.
Avinu Malkeinu, kabel rabarachamim uvratzon et tefilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh ma'an shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act towards us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh lamancha im lo lema'anenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake and not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu, ein lanu melech ela ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu, patach sha'arei shemayim litfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, shema kolenu, hus barachem aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu ve'anenu, ki ein banu ma'asim, aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed, ve'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Good, nice to see
You may be seated.
It is my pleasure to call upon Jonathan Kopp, a trustee, to share with us our annual Kol Nidre appeal.
Shana Tova. Welcome to longtime congregants and newer members, to extended family and friends who have chosen to be part of our BHS community on this day. Before I get to the appeal, I want to first thank our friend Bob Weiss for his many years of standing up here to share so much of his wit and his wisdom from his family's exotic adventures. Where's Bob? Ever since word got out that I'd be up here today, people keep asking me the same question. You're going to be funny, right? I will say this. During a family road trip to Saratoga Springs this summer, I found myself marveling at the town's historic charms and the enormous resources it must take for the community to preserve its Victorian architecture. Bob, we'll talk later. Since this is my first solo appeal, my instinct was to study up. I won't bore you with the trivia, but I will share a few things that I learned. First, it turns out that the old model for funding synagogues relied on tactics like auctioning off high holiday aliyahs and reserving seats near the bima for the biggest donors. This made me fondly recall going to services at my grandparents' conservative shul when I was a kid. My grandpa used to take me by the hand and lead me to his seats, the ones up front with his name on them. Now, as an 8-year-old boy, I just thought it meant he really loved going to temple. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Anyway, about 100 years ago, synagogues started to shift membership dues in order to democratize expenses. According to one source, dues covered about 83% of the average synagogue's budget, while donations account for the remaining 17%. Interestingly, that's exactly the ratio of dues to donations in BHS's last fiscal year. I was curious, why do we do this appeal on Yom Kippur? Well, I learned that it's mostly a matter of efficiency, since this is usually when the greatest number of potential donors show up. And frankly, I wondered, how can it even be kosher for me to pitch you money on such a solemn occasion? Well, what I came to appreciate is that making this donation is actually a manifestation of some of our most core Jewish values. For example, during these holidays, we say that through teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, charity, we temper God's severe decree. As such, by supporting this appeal, we answer this call in real time. This is the rattle and the hum of our thriving community. BHS is unique among synagogues in that we are growing with more than 500 families. While each of us engages with BHS in our own way, there is a powerful synergy in our intersecting experiences on any given day at BHS. In the basement, toddlers are crawling around at welcoming Shabbat, while young parents are forging new friendships that will last a lifetime. Down the hall, homeless shelter volunteers are setting up beds and whipping up dinner for the guests. In Rabbi Lip's study, a nervous bar mitzvah boy gets the big pep talk days before reciting his parsha, while his parents are honing their speeches, hoping they'll get through without crying. Up in the library, 20-somethings gather for Rabbi Molly's other Friday night, and across the hall, the Hebrew High kids are studying in the Oneg room, while Cantor Ayelet's choir practices with Miriam in the sanctuary, and the Social Action Committee is next door in 127 prepping for the next refugee march. In our family, my daughters call BHS their second home. Their bond started before the Blue Room, and it carried them up through preschool, religious school, 2 bat mitzvahs, 9th grade trips to Israel, Bugsy, and whatever comes next. As teenage women, they live their Jewish values because they've learned to value being Jewish. BHS has been a steadfast and joyful partner in helping us raise our Jewish children. Now, this isn't my spiritual journey, but I'm truly surprised by how important BHS has become in my life. When did I become that guy giving Kiddush cups to bar mitzvah kids? Just like my daughters, I'm at home at BHS. As a collective body, BHS has a strong heart and a deep soul. Our people are our vital organs, muscles, and connective tissue. Our brick and mortar, along with the pews and the prayer books, are our skeleton. And this appeal helps feed us so that we can function at full strength every day of the year. Another Jewish value stressed on Yom Kippur is the admonition to live more mindfully. Fasting is one obvious way that we do this, but we can also be more mindful with our giving. Here's what I mean. Many of us give opportunistically. A raffle ticket here, sponsoring a friend in a race, or making a donation in someone's memory. At tax time, we see that it all adds up. But they're one-offs, atomized across an array of worthy causes. By contrast, supporting the congregational appeal is not just another tactical gift. Instead, our participation in this appeal is a strategic investment in our community that pays dividends. We can sort the budget into 4 buckets. First, our tribe is no longer wandering in the desert. We have a home that now spans 2 brownstones. We need to keep them warm in winter, cool in summer, and functioning properly all year round. Then there is our staff. From our clergy to the office to our teachers and custodians, you see them pouring their hearts into their work like dedicated volunteers. But like many of us, they have jobs, and we very gladly pay their salaries. Next is programming. We offer a packed calendar of events, from pizza in the hut to Torah study to dancing in the streets to klezmer music on Simchas Torah, and plenty in between. Most of these are free, but all that Manischewitz and seltzer adds up. And finally, security. As Rabbi Lip said, these days safety is serious business, so we spend more on law enforcement consultants, entry guards, video cameras, and the like. When we break it down, we see that these are all appropriate costs for a thriving nonprofit. I hope we all agree the value we get back from BHS makes our donation one of the best investments around. My family comes to this service every year, and I love that we don't have reserved seats. It's a symbol of why we joined a progressive synagogue. Of course, you'll usually find us about halfway back, just left of center, right there. And you can bet we'll be surrounded by the same familiar faces. I guess we're all creatures of habit. Nancy and I have listened to Bob's travelogues for 20 plus years, and we've always given. Some years we've felt overextended. Other years, we've given more generously, even upping our gift one year to make up for a smaller check the year before. At this time, I'm asking you to pull out the pledge card. Pull it out of your prayer books or get one from the ushers and give what you're comfortable with. If you've never participated, maybe you're a new member or a guest, I'd encourage you to give it a try. Trust me, it'll feel good. If you're a veteran of this campaign, I thank you, I welcome you back, and I'd urge you to take it up a notch. As you can see, the suggested gifts start modestly and go up from left to right. But since we pray in Hebrew, I challenge you to read it from right to left. At any level, by participating in the congregational appeal, we fulfill our communal obligation and we live our Jewish values. Ultimately, when we give to BHS, we find that what we've really done is given back to ourselves. Thank you for your support. Have a meaningful fast, and again, Shana Tova.
Our concluding prayers begin on page 116. Please rise.
May the time not be distant, our God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when lies and bigotry shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. So may all, created in your image, become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your dominion be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Please remain standing, everyone. Our thoughts turn to those loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days, and those who died at this season in years past. Our hearts open as well to the wider circle of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. We call to mind recent passings in our community in the Shloshim, Elias David First, recalled by Michael First and Leslie Snyder. Dorothy Meltzer Robbins, recalled by Jeremy Robbins, Betsy Mallow, Henry and Sasha. Yvette Marcus Friedman Cohen, recalled by Terry Haas, Johnny Frank, Daniel, Florence, and Frankie. Daniel, Frankie, and Jacob. And the passing just this afternoon of our member, Claire Pemstein, mother of Ellen Pemstein, called by Ellen, Dan Haft, Ben, and Sander. Claire's funeral will be on Sunday at Parkside on Friday. Apologize. Claire's funeral will be Friday, 11:15 a.m. at Parkside in Brooklyn, interment following at Wellwood Cemetery. They will be observing a very brief Shiva Saturday evening and Sunday morning before the onset of the festival of Sukkot. We also call to mind those whose yahrzeit falls at this season of the year. John Bernard Zayantz is recalled by Hilary Ackerman. Libby Shapiro, Yisrael Shapiro, Isser Shapiro, Moshe Shapiro, Esther Shapiro, Chaya Shapiro, Pearl Shapiro, and Reza Shapiro are recalled by Laura Shapiro. Irina Teleparovsky is recalled by Sasha Borgansky. Lawrence Nowak is recalled by Joel Nowak. Ida Bernstein is recalled by Taryn Turner. Anna Brody is recalled by Karen Brody. Hamilton Hertz is recalled by Michelle Levine. Lee Feldman is recalled by Linda Feldman. Diana Linetsky is recalled by Mark Linetsky. Carol Katz is recalled by Renee Fishzone. Susan Hillsberg Horowitz is recalled by Jennifer Wilkov. Adele Nellis is recalled by Sharon Nellis. Dr. Solomon Snyder is recalled by Renee Fishzone. Francis Shapiro is recalled by Laura Shapiro. Erwin Isaacs is recalled by Michael Isaacs. John Morris Davis is recalled by Jill Braver. Herbert Epstein is recalled by Larry Epstein. Mark Feinberg is recalled by Pat Rosenblum. Joel Jaffe is recalled by Amy Jaffe Brown. David Weiner is recalled by Helene Furman Gold. Ida Resnick is recalled by Joshua Resnick. Minna Berger is recalled by Andrew Berger. Milton Horowitz is recalled by Sarah Horowitz. My uncle Leo Taft is recalled by my family. Neil Berg is recalled by Jordan Berg. Susan Sloan is recalled by Carolyn Sloan. Charles Francis Goodman is recalled by Bobby and Molly List. Lila Epstein is recalled by Larry Epstein. Seven Ormangol-Nulson is recalled by Melis Bromberg. Melis, I apologize if I've mispronounced your grandmother's name. Ann Gottesman is recalled by Ross Brown. Lillian Johns is recalled by Laura Edidin. And Louis Winter is recalled by Rita Schwartz. If I have inadvertently mispronounced any name which you would like to correct or have left out a name of a loved one that should be shared aloud at this time, I invite you to share names for memory as my hand comes across our congregation. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May their memories be for blessing. We sanctify their names and their memories as we sanctify God's name and pray for the coming of God's realm. The words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, we join as a community page 122. Page 122. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chaye chonu v'yomei chonu v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mivarach le'olam u'lamei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitroman naseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei kudsha b'richu. Le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam Rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Uyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved as we say amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Seated, everyone. The briefest of announcements. Worship tomorrow morning begins at, what time? 9:30 a.m. Too many different times. I'll remind you that the morning service is our opportunity, in addition to hearing Torah and liturgy, to hear the spiritual journeys of a number of our members, as well as our newest clergy team member, Cantor Ayelet Porzakansky, who will be sharing her own spiritual journey tomorrow morning as well. Just a reminder, the virtue of Yom Kippur is in the fast. That's not so much in the sense of afflicting yourself. How long can you go until you eat? If all you're doing is thinking about food, you've kind of missed the point. One way or another, we're told that what we're supposed to do is to offer to tzedakah, righteous giving, the amount we would have spent on our meals for the day. And we have therefore distributed the Trader Joe's bags to fill up with nutritious food. I won't go into one more about what constitutes nutritious food and what doesn't. You can still bring your brown bag to Brooklyn Heights Synagogue. It'll be open in the afternoon. But we have a wonderful offer from Barbara Deinhardt and Dan Silverman that if you would like to make a donation earmarked for the Bugsy Food Drive, that's our youth group food drive, they will act as your agents and take your dollar resources, do the purchasing of the, they know what the nutritious food looks like, and get it over to the food, the Family Justice Center food pantry. So that's another wonderful offer and a way to truly observe the holiday. Am I leaving, Karen, am I leaving out? No, good. With that in mind, just again, we will gather at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. There'll be more announcements all day long. We are going to close as the choir leads us on page 123 with those who sow in tears will reap in joy.
Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy.
us out on this one. Who's so in tears. We'll reap in joy. Come on. Come on, everybody.
Erev Tov, good Yontif, Tzom Kal. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Yeshua, Baruch Tiyeh, Baruch Tiyeh, Baruch Tiyena, Baruch Tiyena. Easy fast. Easy fast. Tzom is a fast, like one of the pillars of Islam fasting. Tzom. Kal means light. Tzom Kal. Or as we like to say in English, a meaningful fast.